Welcome. In the pit lane, 2026 is a new season for TCR European Endurance and as well for GTC. A new package from the Riza International promotion. We are here with Mauricio Slaviero. Ciao Mauricio.
Ciao Antonio, how are you?
I'm good. Always nice to be on track. It's a special track because Slovakiaring always gave quite of huge emotions for the race of TCR European Endurance, and from the 2026 there is also GTC in the package. So what did it happen in the previous winter, because we got quite huge news for this season?
Yeah, we decided to add in our series the GTC Endurance Challenge, what was a huge success. I think it was the correct decision and what we really had to do. Now we have a grid of 17 cars, so 33 drivers. It's really a lot of drivers, so we are really happy with it. I would say that half and half of the grid, 9 cars from TCR, 8 cars from GT4. So it's really nice, it's really wonderful. Everybody is happy. We are here in this wonderful place, Slovakiaring, where we are very well, very welcome from the circuit, the organizers, and everything. We are together with the FIA European Truck Racing Championship. This is a track that is really challenging for the drivers. It's a long one, around 5.8, 5.9 kilometers, but very technical.
And we are basically at mid-season because we had already Vallelunga here in Slovakiaring, and then a new add to the calendar, Valencia, and the usual close of the season in Misano. So I think there is quite a happy situation from you and from Emanuele, because you worked quite hard during the winter, and as you said, 33 drivers on the grid, which is quite a huge success.
Yeah, I think that nobody does anything alone. So we did all together, myself, Emanuele, also you, Antonio. You know, so we worked very hard to have the grid that we have. And if it wasn't like a teamwork, it would be absolutely impossible. So we are pretty happy. Also the teams, we would like to thank everyone, to trust in the series, to trust in the format. But I think that they are very happy. Also the drivers, they like a lot. So it's just now we have to see what's going to happen in the race. I hope that we have a very challenging and a nice race.
We let Daniele tell us the race, and I let you go in race control because you know you got many things to do. So thank you so much, Mauricio, and let's enjoy the race.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Thank you so much to us. Here's promoter Mauricio Slaviero, and a warm welcome to everyone joining us from all over the world. We're here at the beautiful Slovakiaring for round 2 of the GTC Endurance Challenge and the TCR European Endurance season. Here is the starting grid for stage number 1. Of course, we will be talking through this incredible first stage lasting 55 minutes here in Slovakia, a starting grid that sees our pole sitters, Bizdomini and Kamiloglu, starting from first position. Naturally, we have a very healthy grid here for round number 2, as of course Mauricio and Antonio were talking about. We have an incredible increase in numbers in the 2026 season. We have been very blessed with the drivers and teams that have joined our series, and we are ready to have fun here in Slovakia. Cars are already through the first couple of corners. We can also take this time to talk a bit about the racetrack situated here in Slovakia. 5.9 kilometer circuit with 14 corners, 7 to the right and 7 to the left. Designed by Hans Roth and opened in 2009. A track that has built a big reputation in TCR racing and of course GT4 racing as well. The two classes hitting the track in this stage number 1, of course, being the TCR and GT4 classes, ready to give us as much excitement, if not even more, compared to what we had in Vallelunga a couple of months ago for round number 1. Here you can see the first few cars on the grid, with Adriano Visdomini and Koray Kamiloglu starting on pole position. We have, of course, a format that sees a mandatory driver change in between, well, during stage number 1 and then, of course, during stage number 2 on Sunday as well. It will be for Autorlando Adriano Visdomini, who starts the race, of course, already in the number 33 Porsche. And here you can see the Wimmenberg Motorsport box ready to see the start of this race. Wimmenberg, of course, racing in both championships, starting from the TCR pole position in the sequential category with Salvatore Tavano, the reigning champion, together with Eric Scalvini. Of course, Scalvini will take over the car in the second half of stage number 1. But, of course, let's not forget that Wimmerberg also races in the GTC Endurance Challenge with Hans-Peter Eder and his teammate in the Porsche Cayman 718 GT4 car. Our car's now coming towards the final bit of the formation lap. Of course, everyone trying to bring the tires up to temperature. Finding the right temperature window is crucial, especially on a circuit that wears tires this much as the Slovakiaring usually does. We are now into the third and final sector of the circuit. We will be having, of course, a rolling start with Bisdomini and Camiloglu starting on the right-hand side of the racetrack and on pole position, just ahead of Nardilli and Gavazza, the Casas Motorsport BMW, as you can see, lining up on the right side of the screen, but of course the left side of the racetrack. And then in third position, Salvatore Tavano, a three-time TCR Italy champion, lining up on pole position for the sequential TCR category. Just in front of the GTC AM pole sitter, Emilio Damante. He will be looking to give Tudor Motorsport the best getaway possible for the Alpine A110, the only Alpine ready to race here in Slovakia. We have 6 different cars, but we will have plenty of time to talk about them throughout stages number 1 and 2, because the cars are now lined up on the final corner, and we're getting ready to see the rolling start with Adriano Visdomini on pole position in the white Porsche Cayman on the bottom half of the screen, as we are going to go green in just a few seconds to enjoy stage number 1 of round 2 here for TCR European Endurance and the GTC Endurance Challenge in Slovakia. And we have a great start from Salvatore Tavano, who looks to have kept the lead in the TCR standings, but a great braking zone from Adriano Visdomini puts him back on top in the GTC Endurance Challenge standings, with Nardilli, who had tried with his BMW to take the lead, but unfortunately that didn't work, and so Visdomini is still out in front for the GTC Endurance Challenge. Meanwhile, a perfect start for Salvatore Tavano sees him still in the lead in the TCR European Endurance classifications, as we see all the cars rearing and roaring towards turn number 3, as now Visdomini is back up the inside of Tavano. Of course, the two of them working in separate classes, therefore not really against one another, but of course having clean air is crucial to have less tire wear, less aerodynamic disturbance, and therefore a better pace overall. As now we see the cars dive deeper towards this opening lap. We can also see the Audi of BF Motorsport trying hard to fight against one of the GTC cars. Meanwhile, here is Davide Nardilli together with Emilio Damante looking for a spot on the GTC podium. Emilio Damante still in the lead of the AM class. Speaking of the GTC AM standings, there goes one of the Lemma Racing Mercedes, and that is Cornelia Olkutska fighting hard, as now she gets almost attacked up to the inside by one of the Texaco Team AMS TCR entries. Of course, we will have 55 long minutes of racing in stage number 1, which will give us the stage leaders, well, the stage winners as well as the race leaders. Let's not forget the points are awarded for both stages, as well as the combined final race results, which are of course the most important ones. Meanwhile, up the inside goes Cornelia Olkutska once again. That is on the Aston Martin of Gino Motorsport, driven by the two Brazilians, Pedro Ibrahim and Thiago Pinto Bastos. There's also a fight, meanwhile, in the TCR sequential class with one of the Texaco Team AMS entries, driven by Sinan Shifci and Vedat Ali Dalokai, attacked by Wimmerwerk Motorsport with Köckendörfer and Klug in their first ever race in the sequential class. They were part of the DSG standings in Vallelunga. They have upgraded for the Slovakiaring with Vimmerberg Motorsport, the team that brought home the win last year in TCR European Endurance maiden visit here in Vallelunga. Visdomini now trying to build a good enough gap towards his opponents. Naturally, these first few minutes of stage number 1 are crucial in order to get the right gaps and, of course, trying to build a healthy lead should that matter in the final few moments of stage number 1. But, of course, drivers have to settle in, find their own rhythm, and, of course, trying to understand whether or not they have the same speed and the same pace as on Friday, when we had the 2 free practice sessions as well as qualifying, when the drivers could drive in anger for the very first time here at the Slovakiaring this season. Here are so far the standings, with car number 33, the Auto Orlando Porsche of Visdomini, in first position. And then we have the Cupra of Scalvini and Tavano, the number 1 car, of course, given that they are the reigning overall champions in TCR European Endurance. We have then the current GTC Pro-Am Championship leader, Davide Nardilli, in car number 65, and that is in third position. But, of course, it is in second place in the GTC Pro-Am standings behind Visdomini. Meanwhile, here is Sinan Çiftçi together with Vedat Ali Dalokai trying to defend from Kockendorfer in the fight for the TCR sequential podium places. And that is for third position, the last one on the podium, and that is up the inside goes car number 26, with Kockendorfer and Klug taking the lead in the fight for the podium. And that is, of course, exactly what they were looking for in these first 6 minutes of racing. Naturally, Kockendorfer will now have to find some space in order to build a bit of a gap over the number 2 entry of Texaco Team AMS, naturally one of the most decorated teams in the history of TCR European Endurance, winning the 2024 overall title. Well, actually every title that was up for grabs in 2024, as they also dominated the team standings, as well as the Gen 1 and DSG titles being grabbed by the Turkish outfit. They were able to go back-to-back in Gen 1 last year. And the same could be said this season, as they are the class leaders after the opening race. But they are also the TCR sequential leaders, thanks to Çiftçi and Dalokai's win in Vallelunga, which was, of course, their return to the top spot since the very last race of the 2024 season, after a winless year in 2025 in the Queen class. Meanwhile, you can see once again the pack up front, and it has to be said that Visdomini has not created the gap that maybe he was looking for so far, with car number 1 still hot on his tail, with Salvatore Tavano currently driving for Wimmerwerk Motorsport in the grey and orange Cupra Leon VZ, the brand new model that hit the track this year. Meanwhile, there goes the Racing Animals Audi up the inside, and that is for our newcomers Serhiy Volubiev and Ivan Yeremenko, the 2 Ukrainians racing for Racing Animals by GT Sports. Meanwhile, we also have a car off, and that looks to be one of the brothers in arms Cupras. But thankfully, they seem to have everything under control now, given that they are back on track. Speaking of Cupras, here is Salvatore Tavano once more, car number 1. Unfortunately for him, however, he does not look to have the gap that he was looking for over second position, which is for the moment car number 78, driven by Alessandro Lisi for BF Motorsport. This was the fight that we saw basically throughout the entire 2025 season in TCR European Endurance between BF Motorsport and Wimmer Breck Motorsport, with the Austrian outfit, the latter, taking home the title at the end of a phenomenal season. And of course we hope for more of the same this year, though Wimmer Breck has definitely a steep hill to climb after retiring from the opening race of this season after an accident in stage number 1 in Vallelunga put them out of contention, leaving them hung out to dry in the opening race of 2026, a race that was won by Sinan Chifchi and Vedat Ali Dalokai, currently in 4th position in the TCR sequential class, behind Köckendorfer and Klug, who are looking to have a great impact on debut. Meanwhile, here is the pack currently fighting in the 2nd and 3rd sectors. We see the leaders of the TCR DSG standings, with Paolo Palanti in car number 11 working hard to keep that lead over Davide Pezza, the latter for Tudor Motorsport taking the win in Vallelunga. But meanwhile, speaking of TCR DSG, we have some issues regarding car number 93, and that is our championship leaders Pasquale Serratore and Andrea Argenti having some trouble. It hasn't been the easiest weekend for Brothers in Arms after their spectacular 1-2 finish in Vallelunga in the TCR DSG standings. And of course, this means that everything could be once again blown wide open in the championship fight, at least for what is the standings in the DSG category. Here you can see the two Lema Racing Mercedes. It's great to see them up to speed this weekend. Of course, one of their cars, most notably car number 39, driven by Mancinelli and Antonucci, is the GTC AM Championship leader after 2 phenomenal stage wins as well as the overall race victory in Vallelunga. They outclassed everyone in terms of race strategy. They were definitely up with the best. Meanwhile, here once more the fight for the TCR DSG lead, as Paolo Palanti is looking to defend long and hard in first place from Tudor Motorsport. We have a great fight at the moment between the two of them, with Palanti defending from Daniele Verrocchio, the latter joining the series once more, and for the first time this year as a Tudor Motorsport driver, taking Cassara's place from Vallelunga at the helm of the Audi RS3 DSG entry of Tudor Motorsport, one of the teams that is involved in both championships promoted by Riza International, racing of course in the GTC AM standings with car number 38, the Alpine, driven by Edoardo Maccari and at the moment Emilio Damante. So far so good for Paolo Palanti, however, in the Casals Motorsport Audi. He looked mighty quick in practice, then unfortunately for him had to miss out on class pole, being beaten by the very crew that is right behind them so far. Meanwhile, we see car number 26 having dropped a couple of places, and that is Köckendorfer and Klug in the TCR sequential entry for Wimmer Breck Motorsport. That is such a shame for them. They were up into 3rd. I'm not sure what happened to them, but they look to have lost some ground, having lapped in a 2 minute and 34 seconds in the previous lap. Therefore, they definitely have lost some ground. Meanwhile, actually around the outside goes Yeremenko on... Actually, no, that is Serhiy Volubyev around the outside of Emilio Damante. And that is a move for the GTC AM lead for our newcomers in the Audi R8 LMS GT4 car. Audi making its debut in the GTC Endurance Challenge this weekend as the 6th car manufacturer present on the starting grid. Just highlighting how competitive this series has been right from the get-go between different cars. As you can see, Porsches, BMWs, Audis, and of course the little Alpine from Tudor Motorsport, all in the space of a couple of seconds, which was naturally the aim for this championship right from the beginning. And now Serhii Volubiev can actually enjoy a bit of clean air with his Audi, showcasing his speed and pace, which looked very promising in the first half of stage number 1, which we are currently in. Only 14 minutes of the 55 scheduled have gone by, and you can see Davide Nardilli trying everything in his power in car number 65 to catch to the back of Adriano Visdomini. Visdomini was the quickest driver in the first qualifying session yesterday. After some of the times, he was able to take pole together with Koray Kamiloglu, his teammate and former Coppa Italia Turismo rival from last year. But they have adapted fantastically well to the GT4 entry, driven by the two of them for Auto Orlando, a team that has joined the GTC Endurance Challenge with the intentions of fighting for the championship, of course, in the Pro-Am standings, and they look to do just that after a podium finish in Vallelunga. Speaking of podium finishes, here is Edoardo Maccari and Emilio Damante with the latter in the car for the Alpine, driven by the two of them for Tudor Motorsport, as Damante now has the very tough job of staying with the Audi of Volubiev, but looks to be very competitive today. They already hit the ground running fantastically well in qualifying, but of course there was no surprise given the competitiveness of the two former Mazda MX-5 drivers, together with a team as well prepared as Racing Animals. It's of course an outfit that knows the circuit extremely well, and therefore that could be a slight advantage for what concerns these first few minutes. Meanwhile, here we are back with the fight for the overall lead in the Pro-Am standings. Visdomini and Nardilli separated by just 0.7 of a second. This is very interesting indeed. They're coming up towards the very first lapped car, and that is the Cupra from Brothers in Arms. Of course, multi-class racing being once again in the eye of the storm here in the Riza International Championships. Drivers have to learn how to navigate traffic as well, which could well and truly be what decides not just stage number 1, but this entire race, given how small the gaps actually are in these first few minutes. This has been very exciting indeed so far, with Nardilli putting the pressure on Adriano Visdomini. Here he is, the Italian for Casas Motorsport in his BMW, the car that won the opening race in the Pro-Am class in Vallelunga. Nardilli himself is the championship leader. He was sharing the car with Giacomo Maman in Vallelunga, and now he has been substituted by Sebastian Gavazza. Nardilli and Visdomini separated by just 0.4 of a second on the start-finish line. As you can see here, different lines as well taken through the different corners, with Nardilli staying tighter towards the apex. Meanwhile, Visdomini trying to carry more speed with his Porsche. Of course, different cars need to be driven differently in order to go as fast as possible. But now it really does look like Nardilli has a bit more pace than Visdomini. He has completely caught to the back of his rival. Let's see if he can actually muster up a move in the twisty section of the circuit, or will he wait for one of the straights? We're now on the back straight that brings us towards the very final couple of corners, turns number 13 and 14. This very long right-hander where the left tires receive all the load from the cars and wear out pretty fast. It's actually the left-hand side of the tires that gets worn out the most here as we race in a clockwise manner with a lot of medium and high-speed corners towards the right, meaning that the left-hand side tires get all the load in those moments. You could also see Vizutamini fighting hard with his Porsche to get the thing slowed down in time. He could, thankfully, that time around in turn number 1. This is also a perfect time to see what is happening in the other classes as well, with the GTC AM class being led by the Racing Animals Audi, who have just set the fastest lap of the race, a 2 minute 12.296, and that is a phenomenal job from Serhii Bolubiev. He's flying at the minute, sitting in first place in the GTC AM class. Meanwhile, here is the fight for the TCR DSG lead, car number 53, driven by Daniele Verrocchio, going on the attack towards Paolo Palanti, but however the latter seem to have built a bit of a gap over Verrocchio, with now 1.7 seconds between the two of them. They were basically glued to one another a couple of laps ago, and therefore that is very good pace from Palanti. Though of course anything can happen and everything could change, given how quick Verrocchio's teammate Davide Pezza was in Vallelunga and in qualifying as well. As you can see now, the cars navigating traffic, and that is the GTC AM entry of Emilio Damante overtaking the Audi of BF Motorsport. Meanwhile, the two Lemma Racing and Mercedes fighting long and hard. For what looks to be third position in the AM standings. Look at the pace that Serhii Bolubiev is finding at the minute. He was once again the fastest AM entry on track, despite the overtake that he had to complete over the TCR sequential entry of Lysian Berton. The fighting continues, especially for that incredibly important track position. It is not easy, of course, for the drivers to navigate the traffic, and that can also be a problem when two cars of the same team, but being part of different classes and different championships, find themselves out on track together. That was Jakob Trost and Maximilian Köckendörfer, one against the other. Of course, though, they are part of different series and therefore not really in a fight against one another. Of course, Trost and Köckendörfer waiting in the pit lane for their teammates to come in. We will be having a pit stop window very shortly indeed, as the teams will have to pit and serve the mandatory pit stop, where they will have to do a driver change. Of course, that is in the case that the team has elected to put two drivers in. It's the case for every single entry apart from Cornelia Olkutska, as she is racing on her own. Meanwhile, here is the Aston Martin from Gino Motorsport, struggling a bit in this early part of stage number 1, and that was Thiago Pinto Bastos drifting wide in one of the long right-handers, one of the many long right-handers of this circuit. We could also see that Davide Nardilli was much quicker than Adriano Visdomini in the twisty sections of this circuit. Meanwhile, the Porsche has a bit more oomph towards the fast corners and the start-finish straight as well. As you can see, Visdomini pulling away quite a bit into turns 13, 14, and then the long straight that brings us to turn number 1. Meanwhile, we saw briefly Salvatore Tavano still in the lead of the TCR sequential class, with Alessandro Lisi in second position, though Lisi has lost quite a bit of time in the last few laps with the unfortunate track position that he finds himself in, as of course GT4 cars are slower in certain parts of the track and faster in others compared to TCR entries, and therefore, though the pace is kind of similar, the two of them actually slow down one another quite a lot, which is not, of course, what needs to happen. Meanwhile, we have one of our first pit stops, and that is the Gino Motorsport Aston Martin. Fortunately, though, you can see the damage on the rear left tire. This is not a planned pit stop, therefore, unfortunately for them, they will lose quite a lot of time here in Slovakia. Not the start they wanted for their second round. Here you go. As you can see, the teams looking to change that punctured rear left. But back to the action we go, and more precisely in what is the fight for second position in the TCR DSG standings. That was car number 8 for Brothers in Arms, fighting for second spot over Daniele Verrocchio. Michele Locatelli, our other newcomer for this weekend, racing for Brothers in Arms. As you can see now, the top 2 of the GTC Pro Am standings are still very close to one another, only 9/10 separating the two. With Visdomini and Nardilli fighting very hard. In at least what is this first half of stage number 1. We're getting ready to see our first few mandatory pit stops as well. And here we go with car number 26, that is Vimmerbeck Motorsport doing a double pit stop in 2 different classes. Car number 26 will see Maximilian Kögendorfer taking over from Aaron Klug, whereas in the Porsche, Hans-Peter Eder will give Jakob Trost the wheel of the Porsche Cayman 718 of the Austrian outfit. That looks to be, of course, the strategy that they've elected to race with, pitting as soon as possible in order to have more track time available for the second driver. Let's not forget that the drivers who have started stage number 1 were the ones who competed in the first qualifying session of this weekend that took place yesterday at dusk. As you can see, a tire change in the TCR European Endurance. It is mandatory to change at least 2 tires in each and every mandatory pit stop in the series, whereas that rule doesn't apply for GTC Endurance Challenge. You can see also with the split screen how that pit stop will entail for the race. Usually you lose over 2 minutes. Of course, drivers have to respect a mandatory minimum pit stop time, otherwise they will be penalized at the end of the race. And you can see also the 2 leading cars in the GTC Pro-Am standings pitting at the same time, and that is Adriano Visdomini leading Korei Kamiloglu, his Porsche, and then on the other side of the pits it will be Davide Nardilli leaving Sebastian Gavazza, his BMW. Meanwhile, here is once more the Gino Motorsport Aston Martin Vantage Tego Pinto Bastos leaving Pedro Ibrahim the wheel of his car. Unfortunately, however, they've lost quite a lot of time after a unplanned pit stop just a couple of minutes ago with a punctured rear left tire. Very unfortunate for the Gino Motorsport entry. As you can see, they are still ultimating the pit stop phase. That doesn't apply instead for Davide Pezza, who is out on track now after having taken over from Daniele Verrocchio. That is in the fight for the win in TCR European Endurance in the DSG class. And here you can see basically everyone into the pits. You can see the yellow Alpine at the bottom of the screen, and now the number 2 Audi of Cifci and Dalokai, the championship leaders in the sequential class. Dalokai was the driver in the car for the first half of the stage, and now Sinan Cifci is getting ready to go in his place for the second half of the opening stage of this weekend. Everything done for the team that now only has to respect the minimum pit stop time. As you can see, Dalokai in the white suit watching over his teammate. He's probably giving him a couple of tips before taking off. And there goes Sinan Cifci. We're also expecting Salvatore Tavano to come in pretty quickly. He should be doing so in this lap. And here he is. Tavano leaving Edis Calvini the chance to fight for the lead in stage number 1. Of course, the two of them have to work very hard this weekend after having to retire, unfortunately, from Vallelunga. Scalvini, of course, being one of the quickest drivers in TCR European Endurance after taking the title with Salvatore Tavano last year in the overall Engine 2 standings. As you can see, of course, trying to change the front tires as well, giving them more grip for the second half of this opening stage. It is mandatory for Tavano and Scalvini to win this weekend in Vallelunga. Sorry, in Slovakia, after retiring in Vallelunga. And meanwhile, we saw two other TCR European Endurance entries into the pits. That was the Gen 1 class leaders of Berk Karpaklioglu and Umut Göktaş on one hand, and on the other one it was Paolo Palanti, the TCR DSG stage leader, pitting to give Cristian Carinci the chance to bring it home for Casas Motorsport. They were in the exact same position in Vallelunga, but then an unfortunate safety car timing prevented them from collecting the stage win, which instead went to the car that we're seeing on the top left of the screen with Davide Pezza behind the wheel now for Tudor Motorsport. Naturally, he has to work very hard in order to keep at it, and actually trying to bridge the gap to the Casas Motorsport entry of Cristian Carinci, who is still in the pits but will leave rather shortly to go and have a fight with Pezza in the final 23 minutes and 15 seconds of racing here in Slovakia for round number 2 of the TCR European Endurance and GTC Endurance Challenge joint seasons, as the two championships by Riza International have embarked on this wonderful journey together. Meanwhile, it looks to be a difficult Saturday morning for Brothers in Arms. Once again, it is car number 93 of Serratore and Argenti off into the grass and the gravel as they now rejoin the circuit, and thankfully they are safely back on. Meanwhile, in the pits we have BF Motorsport, one of the very last teams that had to pit, and after this we can actually give a rundown of what has happened out on track after the pit stop window, seeing who has gained and who has lost time in these last 10 minutes or so. So far, so good for BF Motorsport, as they were fighting for second position in the TCR sequential standings after taking that spot in Vallelunga, finishing right behind Texaco Team AMS with Cifci and Talokai. A fight that went down to the very final lap of stage number 2 in Vallelunga. We can only hope to have more of the same this weekend. It will be very tough, however, given the pace that Scalvini and Tavano have shown so far, dominating every single session from free practice 1 all the way up to the pit stop window in the opening stage of this race. Meanwhile, as we can see from the top left corner, we seem to have had a change for the lead in the GTC Pro-Am standings after the pit stop window, as car number 65 with Sebastian Gavazza has taken over from car number 33 with Koray Kamiloglu at the wheel, and therefore the BMW is on top for the very first time here in Vallelunga after the Porsche has dominated proceedings in the first half of the stage. Though maybe dominating is a strong word given the very small gap in between the two drivers. Meanwhile, here is the Audi of Alessandro Berton, who has taken over from Lisi at the wheel of the Audi RS3 LMS entry from BF Motorsport. But we should focus once more on the standings so far, given that, of course, as we said a few moments ago, car number 65 is now in the GTC Pro-Am lead. Speaking of GTC, here we are with the AM entry of Serhii Bolubiev and Ivan Yeremenko. The two of them were leading things in the AM standings, but they've also lost the lead to Emilio Damante and Eduardo Maccari, with Maccari now behind the wheel. He was one of the quickest drivers, not just in the AM class, but in the entire GTC Endurance Challenge starting grid in Vallelunga, and therefore he looked to be as competitive, if not even more, this weekend. You can see him now chased by the cameras at the wheel of the Alpine, currently in the lead of the GTC AM standings. The team was leading things off in the first few minutes of this stage as well, before, naturally, given the pace of the Audi, having to settle for second position. Speaking of GTC, now we see Pedro Ibrahim at the wheel of the Aston Martin. He was the fastest driver in the GTC Endurance Challenge in the second qualifying session, then had to settle for third in the GTC Pro-Am final results, given the combined time between the two qualifying turns. Now Ibrahim is looking to mend the damage done by the puncture that the team suffered a few minutes ago. Of course, it's not going to be easy, however, given that he is down into last place for the GTC Pro-Am standings. Still, however, fighting for that podium spot in the category after finishing in second position in Vallelunga in the final race results. A little less than 20 minutes to go then for stage number 1. Let's see and have a look at who the class leaders for both championships are at the moment, starting with the GTC Endurance Challenge that sees car number 65 with Sebastian Gavazza and Davide Nardilli behind the wheel of the BMW M4 prepared by Casas Motorsport. They are currently the GTC Pro-Am leaders. In the GTC AM class, it is Damante and Maccari in car number 38. Switching over to TCR European Endurance, the sequential class is securely held, at least for the lead, by Eric Scalvini and Salvatore Tavano in car number 1. In the Gen 1 standings, it is, of course, Texaco Team AMS with Berk Kalpakloglu and Umut Göktaş in car number 3. And last, but definitely not least, in the TCR DSG standings, it is once more Paolo Palanti and Christian Carinci at the front of the field in car number 11. Speaking of the TCR DSG, we've seen a change of place for second position, as Dario Caso, now in the wheel, behind the wheel of the brothers in arms Cupra, has overtaken Davide Pezza, who seems to have had a rough start to his stint. He was in second position before coming out of the pit lane. Now he's back down to third, but will be fighting, sure, for that second position. He is only 1.3 seconds behind Dario Caso. But now, of course, the cameras are focusing on the top two in the GTC Pro-Am standings. Davide Nardilli and Sebastian Gavazza, with the latter now behind the wheel, still in front after overtaking their rivals in the pit stop window. Domini and Camiloglu are fighting hard from second position. Now the Turk is behind the wheel of the Porsche Cayman, prepared by Auto Orlando, the car that was quickest overall in qualifying with the fastest combined result across the two sessions. Meanwhile, here is Pedro Ibrahim moving up in front of Emilio Damante and Edoardo Macari. Of course, he's trying to unlap himself after the puncture that has affected their race. As we can see now, the cars settling in their own positions for the final 16 minutes of stage number 1. Let's not forget, of course, that racing will resume tomorrow for stage number 2 in an equally exciting, if not more exciting, 55 minutes of racing, we hope. But so far, the two championships promoted by Riza International have gifted us plenty of on-track action. As you can see now, the two GTC entries being part of two different classes, of course, but having great pace so far, at least for Pedro Ibrahim, one of the most promising Brazilian talents, of course, not just in this championship, but in the entire motorsport sphere at the moment. The two cars have now lapped Pasquale Serratore and Andrea Argenti once more. It has been a rough start of the race for car number 93. We were saying this a couple of minutes ago. They are the championship leaders in the TCR DSG standings, which is of course not ideal for them given the position that they find themselves in at the moment. Here is instead the GTC Pro-Am race leader, Sebastian Gavazza. Of course, this is not the first time for his teammate Davide Nardilli to be at the front of the GTC Pro-Am field, but it is for Gavazza, who was competing in the AM standings last time out in Vallelunga. An upgrade for Gavazza, who is intended to race alongside Nardilli for the entire season. That didn't happen in Vallelunga, given that Casas Motorsport had two different BMWs out on track, and therefore they had to split the two drivers into two different crews. And it was Davide Nardilli who took the win in the Pro-Am standings. Meanwhile, the two Wimmerwerk Motorsport entries still together. That is Jakob Trost getting closer to Maximilian Köckendorfer. And I think we will have a switch in positions. We do. Of course, this is not an overtake, as the two are racing in two different championships, but it is important for the GTC entry of Jakob Trost to have some clean air. He comes from a podium place in the second stage of Vallelunga, having timed his pit stop to perfection with the safety car back then. He is now up into what looks to be third position in the GTC AM standings. Speaking of GTC AM, here is Lemma Racing, who is currently in 4th and 5th position. Antonucci and Mancinelli sharing car number 39 and being the GTC AM championship leaders after their double stage win and race win in Vallelunga. And meanwhile, Cornelia Lkucka also fighting for what would be her first stage podium. The two of them being currently separated by less than 13 seconds, as Olkutska is looking to find her groove after a troublesome Friday, but they seem to have bounced back exceptionally well today in stage number 1. They will have Plenty of time then to regroup and come back even stronger for stage number 2, which is set to begin tomorrow, as the second and final stage of this weekend is set to begin at 11:40 local time here at the Slovakiaring. The Mercedes was the dominant force in Vallelunga and seems to have lost a bit of that pace here at the Slovakiaring, but that is of course the beauty of GT4 racing, with different car manufacturers following different philosophies as well to figure out what the best course of action could be with these kind of regulations, which is why we have cars following vastly different philosophies out on track together but having such similar pace. Means that the job from the organizers has been wonderful up until now. The Mercedes now having some good pace, currently in 4th and 5th position respectively. Antonucci Macinelli on one hand and Cornelia Urkutska on the other. Let's not forget that Cornelia is not just the only girl out on track this weekend, but she's also the only one racing on her own with no teammates, which is even more impressive given that she has to race for 55 minutes today and 55 more minutes tomorrow. That is no easy task, especially on a track as demanding as the Slovakiaring. It will be even more demanding in the future future 2 rounds of this championship, given that we go to Valencia in September, which will likely be a very hot race weekend as well, before rounding things out in Misano in November with what will be a phenomenal night race, which has kind of become the staple of the championship really over the years. Bit of trouble for Sebastian Gavazza to get his car slowed down in turn number 13, but thankfully he's managed to do so, while also keeping a 3.6 second gap over Koray Kamiloglu. The two are lapping at a very similar pace. The previous lap was a 2-minute 15.1 for Gavazza, and the same goes for Kamiloglu. There was just 1,000th of a second of difference in between the two of them. A 2:15.106 for Gavazza, a 2:15.107 for Kamiloglu. This is just incredible to watch, especially given how close the two have been throughout this first stage. The two crews have been evenly matched throughout, and it was just a quicker pit stop and in general a quick in-lap and out-lap for Sebastian Gavazza and Davide Nardilli, and that was what made the difference and gave them the upper hand compared to their main rivals. Meanwhile, we are also looking at the fight for what seems to be second position in the TCR sequential class. That was Sinan Çiftçi, who is currently holding third position. He has a 4-second gap over Maximilian Kukendorfer in the other TCR sequential entry. As a Texaco Team AMS couple is, of course, the championship leading car and has a target on their back, though this weekend it seems to be going well for their main rivals at the start of the season, which were Eric Scalvini and Salvatore Tabano, currently holding a healthy 19-second gap over Lisi and Berton in second position in car number 78. Meanwhile, we see the Racing Animals Audi, our newcomers, the all-Ukrainian duo of Yeremenko and Volobuyev, who are still holding second position in the GTC AM standings, but that could swiftly change as we now see an attack brought by Trost up the inside. There goes the Wimmerwerk Motorsport Porsche, who seems to have plenty of pace in these final few moments of stage number 1. Yeremenko not looking to have the pace that his teammate Volobuyev had at the start of this race, and unfortunately for him, he has now lost second position in the GTC AM standings, though the gap to fourth place is quite substantial. It is over 15 seconds over Antonucci and Mancinelli with just 7 minutes to go. mean, the two look to have similar pace. And shout out to Jakob Trost, actually, because he was the fastest driver out on track a few moments ago. Now, of course, with the overtake on the Audi, he has lost a bit of time, and therefore he wasn't in the very previous lap. But he has been mighty quick in this second half of stage number 1, which means that he has earned this overtake and second position in the GTC AM standings. You can see now Yeremenko clipping the grass a bit on the outside of turn number 2. That is instead Sinan Çiftçi, who is fighting in the TCR European Endurance sequential class, and he has a bit of company for that third position because Max Köckendörfer has almost caught to the back of him in this final few moments. He has gained 1.1 seconds in the previous lap. That goes for Köckendörfer, of course. The number 26 Wimmerbeck Motorsport Cupra, which seems to be a very competitive car here. I mean, it was last season as well. TCR European Endurance made a hell of an impression in 2025 here at the Slovakiaring with a surprise DSG win for Wimmerbeck Motorsport, with who would turn out to be the actual DSG champion by the end of the season, Senna Summerbell. This year it looks to be no different for them, as they're currently leading the sequential standings with Scalvini and Tabano, and are looking to put a second car on the stage 1 podium. And that is, of course, the one that we're seeing right now with Köckendörfer and Klug. They have switched to the Cupra Leon Competition model, the car with sequential gearbox, instead of the DSG gearbox entry that they've driven in the past, most specifically in Vallelunga, of course, in round number 1. A change of class that sees them already in the mix for a class podium, which speaks on behalf of Wimmerbeck Motorsport's huge preparation and knowledge, especially at this track. They have tested here in the winter as well. And the Austrian outfit has looked the part this weekend with both its TCR entries and, of course, its GTC Endurance Challenge AM class entry, with Trosten Eder making huge bounce forward after Vallelunga. And they are currently in second position, less than 15 seconds behind leaders Damante Macari, which is very good considering that the final race results were some of the times between stages 1 and 2, and therefore they have plenty of time to fight for that race win tomorrow, starting at 11:40 local time. Meanwhile, Köckendörfer gets rid of Yeremenko to have a bit of clean track ahead of him to try and catch Sinan Çiftçi in the final 4 minutes of racing. That will be a very tough ask, however, given the 3-second gap between the two of them. Köckendörfer needs to be absolutely perfect, and on the other hand, Çiftçi will have to make a slight mistake or two should Köckendörfer wish to be back in the fight for the TCR sequential podium. Here is Pedro Ibrahim, who is among the quickest drivers out on track so far. The absolute quickest one, however, is Sebastian Gavazza with a 2:15.1 in the previous lap, now beaten by Jakob Trost, a 2 minute 15 flat for the Wimmerbeck Motorsport entry. I mean, it is definitely looking to be a very interesting end of stage 1, and of course a very interesting start of stage number 2 tomorrow, given the pace that Jakob Trost has shown. Meanwhile, Edoardo Macari currently at the wheel of this lovely Alpine A110, a car that has impressed in Vallelunga and even more so this weekend at the Slovakiaring, currently holding first position in the GTC AM standings with emphatic fashion. We haven't talked much about the TCR DSG class, but here we go with its race leaders so far, and that is Paolo Palanti and Cristian Carinci, the latter at the wheel. He too seems to have made huge steps forward, and he has a healthy 13-second gap over Dario Caso in the Brothers in Arms Cupra, which is holding second position, and then third place for Davide Pezza and Daniele Verrocchio in the Tour de Motorsport Audi, making it 3 different teams in the top 3 after Brothers in Arms took a Class 1-2 in Vallelunga, but unfortunately the second entry, car number 93, has suffered a bit of issues and is 3 laps down currently, but still going strong, still trying to finish stage number 1 for those extremely important points, which would see them once more at the top of the standings. Meanwhile, this is the other Brothers in Arms entry, and this right here is the current Gen 1 leaders, with Texaco Team AMS dominating this category between 2024 and 2026. Of course, the Gen 1 cars being TCR cars with sequential gearbox that haven't received any updates since at least 2017. The older versions of our beloved sequential cars that are still getting some love thanks to the innovative TCR European Endurance format. They're currently in the lead of the Gen 1 standings, both in the championship and in stage number 1. And here we go back with Casas Motorsport and its Audi RS3 DSG, driven by Palanti and Carinci, leading with just 40 seconds left, which means that we are getting ready to live the very final lap of this opening stage in Slovakia. Here we go with our current race leaders in the GTC Pro Am standings. Sebastian Gavazza has done a terrific job in the second half of this opening stage to open the gap over Koray Camiloglu and Adriano Visdomini, who were leading in the first half before the pit stop window opened. Nardilli, of course, being very quick for Casas Motorsport as well in the first 25 minutes of racing, with Sebastian Gavazza doing the job, as now the clock strikes 0, and we therefore are ready to get things done in stage number 1 as the checker flag is ready to be waved. By the end of this lap, we are currently heading towards turn number 10 out of 14, with Davide Nardilli and Sebastian Gavazza, who have done a terrific job in the first 55 minutes of racing. A very entertaining first stage of the championship here in Slovakia for GTC Endurance Challenge. In their maiden visit to Slovakia, they have provided with great racing, as now Davide Nardilli and Sebastian Gavazza are rounding out the final corner, and they will be getting ready to celebrate their stage 1 victory and the race lead for the Slovakiaring round. And here is the checker flag, as Davide Nardilli and Sebastian Gavazza are the de facto race leaders after stage number 1, as well as the stage winners here in Slovakia, just in front of Koray Camiloglu and Adriano Visdomini. The gap only being 3.3 seconds. Everything will be to play for in stage number 2 between the two of them. Checker flag for the TCR sequential leaders of Eric Scalvini and Salvatore Tavano as well. They keep on going with their Slovakian sweep so far. Meanwhile, also in the GTC AM standings, Emilio Davante and Eduardo Maccari take the lead and the stage win in GTC AM, as we now wait for the other cars to cross the start finish line, especially for the TCR Gen 1 leaders Kalpakoglu and Göktaş, and for the TCR DSG leading car of Paolo Palanti and Cristian Carinci. Meanwhile, a great job from our debutants in the Audi as well, as you can see, with the two Ukrainians taking home the podium place for the GTC AM standings, as we now get ready to see also the checker flag for the very last couple of cars. As you can say now that the TCR Gen 1 race leaders are Kapakoglu and Göktaş, and then on the other hand, Paolo Palanti and Cristian Carinci are the TCR DSG leaders. We see now the two cars that we just talked about getting ready to round out the final two corners, with Kalpakloglu and Göktaş in the red and black Texaco Team AMS Audi Gen 1 crossing the start finish line right about now. And then we also go with the TCR DSG leaders, with Palanti and Carinci, who are just about to cross the start finish line. There they go, and they are the race leaders so far. And that is it for stage number 1 here in Slovakia. We've had an amazing first stage of this incredible weekend. We are having the time of our lives in Slovakia, of course, with a phenomenal job from all of our drivers. Davide Nardini and Sebastian Gavazza having a target on their back for stage number 2, as then we will have the other categories, of course, with everything to play for as well. We'll have a look at the final results in a moment, and here they go, with Gavazza and Nardilli taking home the race lead with just 2.7 seconds between between the two of them, and Camiloglu and Visdomini with a phenomenal job between the two of them. As we see now the final standings, with Tamano and Scarvini also taking the TCR sequential lead. And here you go with the rest of the cars, and that is everything from us here in stage number 1. We will see you guys at 11:40 local time for tomorrow. Thanks for being with us, and goodbye.